time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network on a Thursday night when I know there was some football last weekend, but tonight it really is for real. We have got a state team in action. We've got an SEC team in action. We've got an ACC team in action, and it just takes off from here. Plus, there is NFL preseason action tonight. I think the Panthers are playing.
Taxi Squad preseason action.
True that.
Only problem is that my thumb is not in preseason form yet. I got to get it exercised.
For the clicker?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have got so much for you tonight. It is a very busy Thursday night here on Sports Talk. Among the folks you'll be hearing from, besides the three of us, and that should be enough for you. But, of course, we bring you more. Chuck Reedy, Steve Tannehill, the coach and the quarterback, will be here at the bottom of the hour as they join us for another football season. Morgan on the move shortly after the top of the hour. The money coach, Fran Halloran, in hour number 2, plus recruiting and your phone calls, 800-956-7266. So we need to know how you feel about Saturday, cover or not cover for the Gamecocks and the Tigers. I think I said last night, no cover for Clemson against Furman. And did I say Gamecocks would cover against Coastal?
You said Gamecocks would cover.
Well, after hearing the news today that Josh Belk has been cleared by the NCAA, the Gamecocks have got some positive mojo going for them. I think I'll stick with that. I've kind of gone back and forth. I came in saying I was going to switch, but now I think I'm going to stick.
Well, after hearing
you convinced me to stick.
After hearing that Belk was cleared, I kind of looked out at the skies to see if snow was coming.
Yeah, really.
When it comes to the NCAA.
That's big news for South Carolina. That's a 330-pound or so, give an ounce or two.
More.
You think maybe?
He's listed in the program
359.
359.
But I think he's lost a little bit.
Not
from camp.
Not from what I've seen. Not from the pictures I've seen.
He is a big guy who can move, and you know what?
Unless he's got like an earthworm in there, a tapeworm in there trying to
put him in there next to Kinlaw. That's some heavy lumber for offensive linemen to try and move out of the way. So that's we'll see how they use him early on against Coastal Carolina. One thing that we know, it is hotter than 2 Hades out there, and it's going to be hot on Saturday. Yeah. They're going to have to rotate linemen in there.
Yeah, Will Muschamp was angry at the weather gods going into fall camp. He said that he didn't know what kind of weather dance they'd been doing over the first 2-3 weeks of camp, but anytime that they came out to try and scrimmage around noon in the heat of the day just to try to get used to it, it didn't get hot enough for his pleasure. And of course, this week we've probably seen the hottest temperatures we've seen all month, and that's not going to change on Saturday. They're probably going to use Belk as situational run-first type downs, I think, because they want to be able to use guys like Shameik Blackshear and Keir Thomas in pass coverage and pass rush coverage, I should say. So I'm thinking anytime there's an obvious run situation, you want Belk in there mixing things up. And Lance Thompson said, he likes Belk's attitude. He's got a little big nasty inside of him.
Well, I always try to look at a player and who I would imagine he looks like. And Corn, I came up with this guy. You remember during the Holtz era, junior college transfer, Cleveland Pinckney. If he's anything like Pinckney, it's almost like taking a block of granite and just sitting it at defensive tackle and let everybody else, him draw all the blockers and let everybody else just rush the pass.
Gilbert Brown of Packers vintage, maybe, kind of like you're.
Well, I think Cleveland Pinckney is you didn't know Cleveland Pinckney. He was out of Sumter, went to junior college.
I was trying to relate to you on
No, I hear you. Level. I hear the Gravedigger. I love the Gravedigger when he was with the Packers. Love that guy. But Cleveland Pinckney had the biggest pair of hands I've ever seen in a human being. I mean, that guy's hands were just incredible. So that's good news for South Carolina. Nothing on Cook. Part of the announcement today from USC, Belk didn't say anything more about Cook. So either that is still pending or, well, I guess if it had been declined, they would have said something about it being declined. So that must be still pending.
It might be pending, or it might just be kaput. Who knows?
All right. And so we've got that news for you for South Carolina. And of course, tonight, North Greenville is the first team from the state to jump on the gridiron. The Crusaders will be playing at Tusculum. That should be a good ball game. Is Frankie DeBusk still the coach at Tusculum? the former Furman quarterback. I think he is. So North Greenville taking on Tusculum. The other games around the state as we look ahead to Saturday, besides, of course, the Clemson, Furman, and USC Coastal Carolina games, South Carolina State opening up at Georgia Southern. And that's, of course, very big for Buddy Pugh. Wouldn't it be great if they could open up with a win? Then they go to Central Florida. That'll be tough. If they could somehow split to open up the season, that would be big for them. The Citadel at Wofford, love to see that game. That's going to be tremendous. Josh Conklin making his debut. Brent Thompson looking to get the Bulldogs back on track after a disappointing season last year. Charleston Southern's going to Florida.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
I might have to stop by in Spartanburg on the way back from Clemson to watch that Citadel.
Jerry Odom, head coach at Tusculum.
Okay. You could do that if you work quickly.
Yeah.
You could do that. Newberry at Western Carolina. The Bulldogs, I'm sorry, the Bulldogs. What is Newberry now? The Newberry High School Bulldogs.
Wolves.
The Wolves. I like their team. I think they're going to give Western Carolina a little run for it up there. I would not be surprised if that's not a close game. Benedict hosting Florida Tech. I like the Benedict team. Of course, I'm relying on our visits around the state. I like the Benedict team. And that is it for the opening.
Did you say Limestone?
Week of the season. I forgot Limestone. Limestone at Gardner-Webb.
Yes.
Yeah, going across the border to play the Bulldogs. So I like Coach Iruli and some of his players. And good luck to all the state teams as they get things rolling on Saturday. But we'll be talking more about Clemson, Furman, and USC and Coastal Carolina tonight here on the program. 800-956-7266 is the phone number if you want to join in. So we all agree. How do you guys feel about over the cover or not for Clemson Furman?
I think Clemson will cover the 42.5 or wherever it's being reported. The 42.5 was the number that we agreed on. I like them to cover that against Furman. I think too much of the line of scrimmage play will be dominated by the Tigers in that one. I think it's going to be a little bit closer with Coastal Carolina and South Carolina, to be honest. I think the lines of scrimmage match up a little bit better with South Carolina. And I think, too, you got a couple of motivated guys, a guy like Shadell Bell of Coastal Carolina who came here over from Clemson, Sterling Johnson, same thing, a transfer from Clemson to Coastal Carolina. And I think, too, Joe Moglia is a master motivator. You think about the fact that he has come into this program and obviously coming off of the off the field illness last year. You know that those players are going to want to play for him in his first game back pretty intensely. And I think too, if there's anybody who could be a master motivator in this level, it can be a guy who was a former CEO at TD Ameritrade. Yeah,
no question about it. But I don't think they have enough weapons. I don't think they have enough. I think this Gamecock team is going to be exceptionally inspired. They want to get off to an impressive start. They need to. They don't need to go out and beat Coastal Carolina, say, 21-3 or 21-10. They need to post a number. They need to show that the offense is fixed, that the quicker pace is going to work. Jake Bentley needs to come out and have a day where he is in the neighborhood of, say, 22 of 27, 250-plus yards, maybe 3 or 4 touchdowns. I'm just saying they need to have that kind of day offensively just to show people that with Georgia coming up around the corner, they're going to be able to put a decent, respectable, maybe even borderline powerful offense on the field. And Rico Dowdle needs to get 100-plus yards running the football.
I've always had the feeling with South Carolina, less more with Clemson, that if South Carolina has a big game coming up, a second or third game, and they're playing an opponent they should beat, they almost suddenly try to keep the aces tucked in their back pocket and not show much. And if you notice, historically, South Carolina has been hospitable hosts in keeping the game at least manageable for their visitors. Clemson takes no prisoners.
Yeah. Just from my mind, I think that, again, we haven't seen them blow out anybody.
42.5 points.
We haven't seen South Carolina blow out anybody under Will Muschamp.
Going back to Clemson, I'd like to start a game up 42.5 points. So, hey, want to remind you, if you lose us over the airwaves, catch our Periscope on Twitter, our feed on YouTube, and on the TuneIn app and the radio.com app, and we'll be right back.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we return here on a Thursday. Willie P., Phil Kornblut, and Professor Tom Hayes. A reminder, we will be in Aiken next Wednesday for the big border bash between South Carolina and Georgia. We'll be, of course, wanting you to come out there and visit us at the brand new venue out there, the Tailgate Tavern in the Alley in the heart of downtown Aiken. We'll be doing our show from 6 until 8 there on Wednesday, September 5th. 28 televisions, major props from diners on their brand new food. Our affiliate KSX 92.7 will be broadcasting there before us from 4 until 6. We'll be under the canopy on the 5th, and it's brought to you by the fine folks of Palmetto Pride. Litter trashes everyone.
That is just going to be fantastic. Looking forward to being there next Wednesday night as we did our Palmetto Pigskin preseason tour around the state. Now our Palmetto Pigskin live in-season visits with schools as the season is going on. We get a different angle from the coaches. And also, of course, when we go to the locations where schools are involved, we'll have ADs and maybe a visit from the basketball coaches as well.
Yeah, we're returning again to a very great venue we had last year, one of our biggest in Newberry at Bar Figaro. We're going right back there on
They love us in Newberry.
The 20th of September, Bar Figaro on Main and Nance, just across from the Hampton Inn in historic downtown Newberry for that game against Carson Newman. So we have that. We've got trips scheduled at Spartanburg for Wofford, as well as what's going on with Furman as well in Greenville, the Citadel, and, of course, the big Clemson matchup against Syracuse. We have one plated for that. So our first Clemson in-season tour as well.
All right, 800-956-7266. You can email us as well. Talkback at sportstalksc.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. If you haven't already, follow us on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. A reminder about Saturday, Will be going up the hill to fetch a pail of Tigers or Paladins. Hey, how you like that?
It's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
He'll be at Clemson Saturday. Pro and I will be at USC. And, of course, we'll be on Twitter throughout those games, post-game coverage with video highlights from the post-game interviews, coverage on our website, sportstalksc.com. Make sure you check all of that out on Saturday.
Can I ask you a definition question? How would you define a blowout? What margin of victory would you say?
In my world, I consider a blowout to be something along the lines of 3 touchdowns or more.
Okay. I prefer I don't know if there's a number that I would put on it, but I would put it would need to be obscene. It's kind of like the way that the Supreme Court defines obscenity. I don't know how to define it, but I know what it is when I see it. Would you say 31-13 is a blowout?
See, that's 18 points. It just depends. See, when I think about it, if you're 2 touchdowns down going into the fourth quarter, you still have a legitimate shot.
Yes.
And a team can kick a late field goal or knock in a late touchdown. You lose by 17, you lose by 21, but you were actually kind of in the game in the fourth quarter.
Would you say that 48-22 is a blowout?
That's 26 points?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would consider that a blowout.
That's the only real blowout that South Carolina has had under the Will Muschamp era. This is Lawrence who's got me on Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Ask Arkansas and Missouri if South Carolina ever blew anybody out under Muschamp. Do your homework and stop hating. When I'm talking about blowout, I'm talking about...
Listen, can I say something about Lawrence?
Yes.
He's going to hate on everything.
Well,
Okay? He probably hates Christmas. He probably hates his mother. He probably hates his dog. Okay, he just hates on everything.
This is what I define as a blowout. When somebody not named Jake Bentley is taking snaps under center for South Carolina, that's a blowout.
That's not going to happen.
Well, now there could be an injury involved.
No, here. Let me throw.
That's what I'm saying. They haven't had a game like that where they could put walk-ons on the field.
Let me throw you a monkey wrench in your question here. What's the difference between a blowout and a beatdown? Because I've seen,
I think they're the same thing.
I've seen games
Semantics.
where say, I've seen a game where say, when you've seen Alabama beat somebody by 14 or 18 points, and you could tell literally they were beaten.
Hey, by the way,
physically.
Can I send a request to ESPN?
Yes.
Besides go away. Now that the season is here, can they stop replaying the Georgia-Alabama national championship game? I think they probably have worn a tread into that video. They have replayed that game so many times. It was on again this afternoon.
The SEC network was replaying Clemson Alabama Sugar Bowl yesterday morning.
Yeah.
No, I will tell you that I've taken an unofficial count, and I swear the Georgia-Oklahoma game has been the one that they run into the ground.
Yes.
That is the one
that
run into the ground.
That was one of the best football games for entertainment purposes.
Yeah.
One of the best entertaining football games that I've seen in a long time.
Well, you see, I missed a lot of that game because it followed the Clemson game.
Yeah.
I was watching that in the press box in New Orleans.
Yeah, and then also followed the South Carolina game, all being played that day. And so I missed a lot of that Oklahoma-Georgia game. And, man, following it finally when I got a chance to watch it on my phone as I was eating somewhere and just watching those guys go back and forth up and down the field, it was like, where is the defense? I mean, you still have to play defense to win championships to some degree, and neither team could stop the other that day. I don't like that kind of football. I don't like football games where you got to score. You got to score in the 50s or 60s to win. You might score 50 or 60, but you've shut the other team down and held them to 15 or 20.
They've always complained that the teams on the West Coast play no defense. Well, maybe it's the air, because suddenly two teams that usually play decent defense decided to leave their defenses in the hotel room.
All I'm saying is, back to my original point, there hasn't been a game in the Will Muschamp era where they haven't had the ability to put people who look like me on the field. Basically,
that's a scary thought.
Well, the walk-ons.
Now, the new odds for the national championship, the final preseason odds from Bovada. So Alabama has moved from 7-4 to 11-5. Clemson has gone from 11-2 to 4-1. Shorter odds, I guess you would say, huh?
Shorter.
Still second. Ohio State's gone from 8-1 to 15-2. And Georgia from 9-1 to 8-1. That's your top four. Washington is 15-1. Michigan is 18-1. Auburn is 22-1. Now, Auburn and Washington play this weekend in Atlanta. Should be a heck of a ball game.
Yes.
I think I will side with the Tigers on this one. The game is probably more important to Washington from the standpoint of the big picture, because they need a huge win. Auburn still has big games on its schedule down the road. They can recover from a loss. Not sure Washington can, even though it's the opening game of the season. As I scroll down the list, I see that South Carolina held steady at 200-1. As far as the Heisman Trophy, Bryce Love remains the odds maker's favorite at 13-2.
Where's Trevor?
Tua Tagovailoa is 15-2. Jonathan Taylor, who should have a monster year behind that monster offensive line at Wisconsin, 17-2. Will Grier is 11-1. They got Dwayne Haskins in there, Trace McSorley. Khalil Tate's a guy that's getting some traction. He's 12-1. Trevor Lawrence is 16-1.
Oh.
He is listed at 16-1. Kelly Bryant is listed at 50-1. Got to have a Jake Bentley in here. Come on, hang on a second. Let's see here.
Lots of disrespect.
Do I see a Jake Bentley on this list?
Can somebody put some respect on Kelly
Drew
Bryant's
Lock
name?
is on here.
Oh, yeah.
At 45-1.
You see they've sent did you get your Drew Lock bobblehead sent from the Mizzou athletic office? The folks who have Heisman votes?
You know what I'm going to do when I get it?
No, but
I'm going to take it outside and take my BB gun and use it for target practice.
Wow.
See if I can shoot the head off.
See what they
Instead of shooting squirrels, I'm going to shoot Drew Lock bobblehead dolls.
What Missouri should do is have the basketball player and have the bobble rump. See if that works out. By the way, when I think of Auburn, Phil, Auburn has to get rid of some demons this weekend.
Yes.
Because they went into Atlanta and lost the SEC championship game. Lost in Atlanta again and let Central Florida ambush them. So they walk in there.
That's
they
a
got
house of horrors for them. Good point.
Yes.
One more on here. Keep an eye. They've got Cam Akers, Florida State, 60-1, and DeAndre Francois, 60-1. I think Florida State might be. Oh, you know what? Travis Etienne's on here at 80-1. Clemson's got 3 listed for the Heisman.
Our first edition of Coach and the QB, Steve Tannehill, Chuck Reedy, join us next on Sports Talk.
We go inside the huddle with the coach and the quarterback up next. This is Sports Talk.
It is time for us to go inside the huddle with the quarterback, Steve Tannehill, one of the best to sling it for South Carolina, and Chuck Reedy was part of that magical staff that won Clemson's first national championship.
I thought you were going to say that magical staff at USC.
No.
For a year.
not quite where I was going with that.
Not a lot of magic created that particular year.
No.
But there was plenty of magic up at Clemson. That's correct. Good to have the two of you with us. Chuck Reedy, everybody go visit the Comeback Shack right there at Charleston Southern University, just down the road. Wonderful place, Coach.
Well, I'm glad you liked it, Phil. Yeah, we've been open now for about 2.5 months. We're doing very well. Matter of fact, we met today and we're getting ready to buy our second location and hopefully have the second one open within by this time next year.
That's great. And it's good to have, of course, Steve Tannehill, one of USC's all-time greats, back with us. And everybody, after a Gamecock victory or a loss or any time during the week, go to group therapy and get yourself refreshed. Correct, Mr. Tannehill?
Yeah, man. Bring it on.
How are you?
He's not big in the promotions game. He doesn't need it.
No, he really doesn't.
I say you walk past.
Well,
I walk past
guy,
5 points on Monday. They don't need any help.
This guy was the king of self-promoters coming out of high school and in college, and now he's gotten quiet on us.
I guess I'm just getting old.
Yeah. It's good to have you back with us. Are you at the Sherrall Chesterfield game?
What's that?
You're at the Sherrall Chesterfield game tonight?
Yeah, I'm almost in Chesterfield now. I haven't been here since 2011, and they play on a Thursday, and I can actually come to a game. And Grant Calder, who's the defensive coordinator, and I are still good friends. So he invited me, and I said, "Yeah, I'll ride up." So we're almost there. Game starts at 7:05, and I think it's on TV, like in the Florence and Myrtle Beach area.
Great. Well, listen, we're looking forward to a great season with you guys once again. We always enjoy your input and insight. So, Coach, let's begin with you, and let's talk quarterback at Clemson. Your thoughts about Kelly Bryant emerging again as the starter, and where do you think this is going to lead?
Well, I think that was a no-brainer all along. The guy won 12 games last year. He's the guy. I'm not a bit surprised, that, Lawrence obviously very, very talented. What he does for them, I think, is Bryant, obviously was good enough to win 12 games, but he wasn't good enough to beat Alabama when Alabama made Clemson beat them throwing the football. This year, if anybody is good enough to put them in that situation, now you've got Lawrence that can come in and beat you throwing the football. Mm-hmm. So, I think they've got a great situation. They're not going to screw it up by putting Kelly Bryant on the bench. I can tell you that. I mean, they're going to go with the senior, and then they're going to play Lawrence a lot. And but as long as things are going well, I think Kelly Bryant will be the guy.
Steve, when you came to South Carolina, you were that highly touted freshman and waiting for your shots, and you eventually got it about midway through that freshman season, and the rest was history, I guess we could say. But how do you think Trevor Lawrence is going to handle this situation kind of right now, waiting his time? And, as the guy waiting, of course, you want the team to win and all that, but you also want to play. How do you think mentally he's going to be handling watching Kelly Bryant out there during these games, at least the early part of the season?
Right, I think he kind of had to know coming into the situation that it was an uphill battle for him to beat out Kelly Bryant. I mean, they did, they won a lot of games last year. Bryant played, awfully good, and so I think it's different. But the way you go into a game as the starter and the way you go into the game as the backup is completely different. It's something I had to learn for a little while because I was never a backup in high school, and so. Lawrence is going to have to understand that. I mean, you don't prepare. It's not the same because the team it's not your team. You're the backup, and it's just different, and it takes time. But I think he kind of knew going into the year that he probably wasn't going to start. I mean, maybe he is good enough to start, but with the year they had last year, and I think Bryant played awfully good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it surprised anybody that knows the game of football that Kelly Bryant was going to be the starter.
Of course, Steve, South Carolina is dealing with an offensive overhaul, new offensive coordinator Brian McClendon. How do you feel that this offense will look, and will it look better than it looked at the end of last year?
It's got to. I mean,
easy.
Let's be honest.
I mean, that's a softball question if I've ever heard one.
I mean,
excuse me,
really,
Steve, go ahead.
I mean, they had Hayden Hurst. We didn't use him, first-round draft pick. He's talented through the wideouts, and we didn't hardly use him. I like what they're doing, and I think it fits Jake better. It's what he's done since he was in the 3rd grade. I mean, he's gone fast. There's no huddle. You call a play, you go, and you let your guys play. And they're so good at wideout. I think it's one of the top 5 wide receiver groups in the country. Let's get the ball in their hands and let's go fast. I worry about the defense a little bit because I don't think they're very deep. And if the offense struggles some going that fast, the defense is on the field for a long time. But as far as Jake's concerned, I've talked to Jake. I went to practice. This is the stuff he's comfortable with, and I think he'll have a great season.
Coach and quarterback with us here on Sports Talk. Coach, did you ever run across Dan Werner back in your college coaching days? You know him at all, or even if you don't, what do you think of him as in terms of what you do know regarding him as a quarterback coach and developer?
Yeah, I never did. You forget how old I am, I guess. Still, I mean, he's quite a bit younger than me, but everything I've read about the guy, I mean, he's got a great, great track record with quarterbacks. What they did at Ole Miss was, very, very, very impressive. And, I think, and I think McClendon is, going to do a great job, but it's always good when you've got a young coordinator that you've got that older veteran coach, next to you that, can, he doesn't have to call the shots, but he can definitely provide input and be someone that you can bounce things off of. And I think it's a great combination that Muschamp has put together.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Clemson's quarterback situation because it seems, Chuck, when you're the coordinator and you're calling plays and you say, well, let's make a change here, the quarterbacks seem at some point have the same type of talent set. With these two quarterbacks, they almost look totally different in the way they attack the position. So as a coordinator, do you have to have a specific set of plays stacked up for quarterback 1A and quarterback 1B, or how do you work that when one comes into a football game, say in the middle of the contest?
I don't think that Clemson is going to have different plans for the two guys. I mean, I think they'll have the same plan for both of them. Yeah, obviously what Kelly Bryant's strengths are. And so when he's in there, you're going to call plays that are more suited to what his strengths are. When Lawrence is in the game, you're going to call plays that are more suited to the things that he does well. But, both of them, from what I understand, Kelly Bryant has really improved the deep ball throws, which, time will tell. And we know he's a good runner, but, we also, from everything you hear, Lawrence is a good runner as well. So, I don't think you have two plans. I think, as a play caller, you call plays that are better suited, for the guy that's in the game.
We are visiting with the coach and the quarterback here on Sports Talk. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back with a couple of more minutes with the two of them, Chuck Reedy, who's busy flipping burgers, and Steve Tannehill, who is not mixing drinks tonight, but he is going to go watch some high school football.
He's mixing it up in a different way.
Yes, he is. He might even have his shotgun with him. He's going to shoot a deer when he finishes up football.
No, I don't know.
Almost hit one the other night coming back from Gaffney, taking back roads to Columbia. Wasn't a pretty sight.
Serves you right.
We'll be right back.
The guys are always checking email. Send your comments or questions to talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, more of Sports Talk from Columbia's Main Street.
Okay, we continue with the coach and the quarterback, Chuck Reedy, Steve Tannehill, for a couple of more minutes. So, Coach, I know you hate it when I ask questions like this about, greatest era of Clemson football and all that, but there's no doubt, we're in the greatest era of Clemson football ever right now. So I hear no response. Is this the greatest?
I don't disagree with you. I totally agree with you. I mean, what they're doing is phenomenal. I mean, they're at a level. I mean, they're at the level Alabama is, maybe Georgia. We won the national championship, which was, obviously, a great accomplishment in 1981. But no, we never had the kind of success they've had now, and the talent level they've got, and the way they're recruiting is, like I said, they're at a level that there are only maybe one or two teams in the country are at right now.
So my question is, focusing on that defensive line, and of course you were around some great ones at Clemson, is
right. I
mean, some are saying it's the greatest defensive line this year in college football, maybe ever put together. Is that too much of a hype?
Well, no. I mean, you've got you've got potentially 4 first-round draft picks. That's probably not the case, but it's probably 3 anyway. Like I said, we had you had William Perry, we had Jeff Bryant, we had Benish. I mean, we had some very good players, but I mean, no, what they've got, I mean, the fact that all of them came back is, almost unheard of. Mm-hmm. But no, I've got a real good friend who's a ACC official who officiated a number of scrimmages in the ACC this fall, and he said Clemson, I mean, they're like they're like at another level than any other ACC team is when you look at them physically. I mean, there's just no comparison between where Clemson is and where the rest of the ACC, or certainly the ones that you've seen.
Mm-hmm. Steve, I'm not going to ask you to break down his ability because we haven't seen him play yet at the collegiate level, but for a guy for a situation like Josh Belks with South Carolina and getting the news they got this morning on his eligibility, what kind of little extra oomph and infusion does that give to a football team?
Well, I think he was needed. I don't think, and this is my personal feeling, I think we had 5 D linemen that could play in the SEC at that level right now. I think he makes 6. Now, he's probably not in very good shape because he hasn't been able to do a lot. But he's definitely going to be a big help. He's a former 5-star. He's a big, giant guy. We need depth on the D-line, so it is a giant bonus that happened today. And I don't think it matters too much this week, but next week I definitely think he plays a part in helping the depth of the defensive line for sure. So he hasn't played, but just getting that guy eligible, I think he makes a giant difference for the overall depth of that defensive line.
All right, last thing, Steve, real quick. I know Georgia's not till next week, but Georgia is on our minds. Huh?
Really?
Can the Gamecocks beat Georgia next week?
I don't know. I think we get them at a good time. We get them at home. We get them early in the year. I think we have a chance. We're going to find out how good a football team we have real early in the season. But I definitely like getting them at home. I think Georgia's, as far as guys on the team, got one of the most talented rosters in college football. That doesn't mean you're one of the best teams. Normally it helps a lot. But I think next week we find out a lot about this year's edition of Gamecock football.
And Chuck, does Clemson run the table regular season?
Yeah, the only way that they don't is if they pull a Syracuse or pull a Pittsburgh, where they just aren't prepared to play and don't go play. They've got probably they have the easiest schedule of any of the major national contenders.
Alabama's pretty easy.
Well, no, Alabama has to play in the SEC. I mean, theirs is a lot tougher than what Clemson. There's nobody on Clemson's schedule. The toughest game Clemson will have will be going to College Station, playing at night. And A&M's not good enough to beat them, but that'll be a tough road game for them. The problem the biggest problem Clemson has, in my opinion, is that they will not be tested all year, and that will hurt them once they get into the playoffs. They're going to be playing people that are entirely different level from anybody that they've had to play all year. And I think that's a disadvantage for them because the ACC is just not, is not competitive enough right now to really challenge them.
You don't think Gamecocks can test them in November?
I mean, that's a long way away. Unless,
wow. It's a dodge.
But to answer your question, no. I mean, Carolina's getting better, but they're not at the level Clemson is. I mean, you can go and like Steve said, Carolina's got a top 5 receiving core. They do. Clemson's probably got number 1 receiving core. Mm-hmm. I mean, they got 9 guys that say will play in the NFL. I mean, it's just the talent that they've been able to accumulate there is very, very impressive.
Thank you so much. Remind everybody down Charleston Way, the Comeback Shack. What's that highway? Is that 52? No. That's University Boulevard. That's 205B. Okay.
Yep, right at the Charleston Southern exit, 1 mile from the interstate.
And everybody knows where group therapy is. In 5 Point. Green Street. They can find their way to it, can't they, Steve-O?
I hope so.
Use your Uber when you're going to group therapy. Use your Uber.
We thank you guys. It's going to be a great season. Right, enjoy the weekend. Thanks.
Thank you.
The out of conference for Alabama is just sad and sorry. Mm-hmm. Neutral site Louisville, A-State, and this is something that Tim Brando hit on, so I don't want to steal his thunder. I want to give him credit. But Louisville and Orlando, A-State, Louisiana Lafayette, mm-hmm. and the Citadel. No offense to all 4 of those programs, but that's not what I would call a strenuous schedule. And their roadies are at Ole Miss, at Arkansas, at Tennessee, at LSU. The only one I think that gives them any pause is that game at Tiger Stadium. That's what I'm saying. Relative to where they are, that is not a difficult schedule.
I wouldn't have one either the way it's done now, because even with the strength of schedule, we could see that even the committee is dickering with the numbers.
What are they doing?
Dickering with the numbers. In other words, they'll say,
what is so funny about that?
It just seems
I don't know.
I've never heard
that.
That's
a word. That's a good word. That's a usable word.
That's fine.
I don't
because they'll say somebody has a strength of schedule. In fact, some people were
finally admitted it.
Some people were talking about the conspiracy theory last year that the only reason they shoved South Carolina is at number 24, so Clemson could have yet another ranked team they could beat on their schedule.
Oh, that's a conspiracy. There you go. There you go.
All right, let me hit up the recruiting before we hit the top of the hour. We'll begin with some football notes. Clemson target, offensive lineman, defensive end Cooper Dawson of Hanahan was offered by Vanderbilt. Dawson out for the season with a torn ACL, plans to visit Clemson for Georgia Southern game. He's also set officials to UCF and Vanderbilt in November. He's undecided about the other 3. He also said Clemson has mentioned a gray shirt to him, which I'm not sure is something that will excite him. Cornerback Johnny Dixon of Tampa remains strong on USC after he visited officially in June. He will take an official visit to Penn State September 28th and will decide soon after that. He's also talking to Florida and Miami. He does not have any plans on a return trip to USC before he decides. Linebacker Quavaris Crouch of Charlotte told the website Carolina Blitz he will schedule official visits with Clemson, Alabama, Florida State, Michigan, Southern Cal. He said USC and Tennessee remain in the running and have not been ruled out, but that's not good news for USC. USC has kept up its interest in linebacker Dante Walker of Ellenwood, Georgia, who now has a qualifying test score, according to Recruit Georgia, so he could become a bigger target. And the coach of 6'5", Wendell Moore of Charlotte, told the State Moore has canceled an official visit to USC for September 8th. He'll visit NC State, North Carolina, Duke, and Wake Forest and choose from one of those. Top of the hour. We'll be back.
2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
We are back. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on what has been just a extraordinarily good show so far, if I must humbly say so myself. Welcome into Sports Talk, South Carolina's most talked about, most followed, most discussed sports talk show. And when I am talking, South Carolina's most handsome sports talk show, voted on by 75% of the women in South Carolina who listen to Sports Talk.
Not true.
In just a moment, Mike Morgan will join us. Morgan on the move. Got a few notes from Will Muschamp this evening.
No Travis Dawkins this week. That was something that we saw on Tuesday. He was doubtful, so he is completely out. They expect him back next week. Mon Denson, hamstring injury, has been spotty this week. They'll see how he is tomorrow, though they are very deep at that position with 3 people, A.J. Turner, as well as Tyson Williams and the starter Rico Dowdle. Muschamp complimenting what the folks at the compliance department did in order to get Josh Belk eligible. They say that he will play on Saturday, but he's not sure necessarily how much. They're looking more at Rick Sandage, J.J. Mbare in that second rotation on the defensive line. And, of course, some of the stuff we talked about earlier. J.C. Horn will start at nickel, Fenton and Nixon on the outside, eBay and Montac in the secondary.
All right, Mike Morgan here with us now. Mike on the move.
He is brought to you by the folks at Founders Federal Credit Union and the mortgage team there, more equipped than ever to help you with the mortgage process. Visit foundersfcu.com/mortgage, and by BP Skinner Clothiers, the best in suits, shirts, pants, shoes, and more available to you. Visit their showroom in the Vista, or no matter where you are, Brent will come to you. bpskinnerclothiers.com.
Another thing about Mike, we can talk to him about so many different things in the world of sports. College football, basketball, baseball. He does it all. Major League Baseball with the Atlanta Braves. We cannot forget about the Braves, Mikey, because they haven't gone away. They're actually maybe getting better. And my goodness, are they going to make a run in the playoffs to the World Series?
Well, I think, first of all, let's take inventory on what they've done. The fact that they're in first place, the fact that Washington has basically waved the white flag, even though they have a much more talented roster, quite frankly, than Atlanta. The fact that Philadelphia seems to be bowing out themselves, not voluntarily, but they've been humbled a bit here of late. And the fact that Atlanta, it just has staying power. And honestly, I mean, when we were talking about this 2-3 months ago, I didn't think they would. I mean, I really didn't see some of the performances that this team has been able to put together, and just a knack of winning close games and a knack of playing like a postseason team would. I don't know anybody that predicted this, but one thing is for sure, when you do it over this length of period, it's no longer labeled a fluke or a surprise or just kind of a feel-good story. They're a legit team. I'm not going to talk about World Series. Who the heck knows? Once you get in, it is baseball, and it is kind of a wild card situation, even though they're probably not going to be the wild card. But a guy who does not get enough credit is Brian Snitker. As a guy that I've known just calling spring training games. I knew him when he was an assistant on the bench for the Braves. I knew him when he got the job managing the AAA Gwinnett team. And all along, you just got the feeling this guy he was a lifer, but he was never going to get his chance. And then when they gave it to him after they fired Freddie Gonzalez, the feeling was, well, it's just kind of a pat on the back for a job well done and commitment to the franchise, but you're going to be replaced by a bigger name. He wasn't. And he's done a tremendous job ever since.
As far as the football this week, Mike, a couple of big matchups in the SEC and non-conference action. I want to talk to you about Auburn-Washington, because it seems to me that probably is one of the best quarterback versus quarterback matchups we have in the opening week of play. How do you see the Tigers and Huskies matching up in Atlanta?
I think it's the best matchup on the board, honestly. I think when you look at it, excuse me, had a little bit of a doggy issue there.
You okay, Mike?
You
need us to call?
Yeah, I'm fine.
911 or anything?
My,
okay.
I was concerned about my Boston Terrier there. Baxter lives a hard life sometimes. I think it's the best matchup on the board, and the reason why, I think overall Washington is one of the best teams that Auburn's going to face all year. And even though they're not an SEC team, they certainly have SEC caliber athletes. I just don't think they match up well against Auburn. I think Auburn this year with Jarrett Stidham back. Last year you look at the opener against Clemson, Stidham gets sacked, I think it was 11 times. He didn't throw the ball quickly enough. His offensive line was leaky. I think they've patched that up. I think he's a much better player. They'll run the football well, and I just think Auburn's a better team and will pull off a win. And if and when they do, not only bad for Washington, it's really bad for the Pac-12 as a whole.
You don't think that there's a hangover with Auburn? I mean, the last time they've been in that stadium, last two times they've been in that stadium, it did not bode well for War Eagle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that had two different scenarios. I think in the case of the Georgia game, Georgia was just a better team at that point in time. In the case of the UCF game, and not to take anything away at all from the Knights, but I think Auburn was a team that rolled in there thinking they could just put on their SEC gear and take care of a American Conference opponent that was overrated and was really just there for the pickings. And Auburn played like it. I think this is a different scenario altogether. If you can't get motivated for week one against an out-of-conference foe, a team that a lot of people think is going to be in the playoff, then something's wrong. I think they'll be fine. I think the venue, it's funny you mentioned the venue. Whether there's a jinx or not, I know this much. That crowd is going to be about 85 to 90% War Eagle, and the other 10 to 15 will be the Washington fans that decided to travel nearly 3,000 miles. But it's essentially a de facto home game for Auburn.
With Texas A&M playing Northwestern State, Georgia playing Austin Peay, and then, of course, we know what they've got next week. How much do you think those two teams will show of themselves in those games? Or do you think Jimbo Fisher, first game at home tonight, has the extra rest time for Clemson? You think he really wants to come out and run it up big to kind of get the Texas A&M mindset in that direction of, hey, we got a high-powered offense going here now under Jimbo?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the big news on that game is the news that just came about within the last 24 hours, and that is Kellen Mond is going to be the starter. I thought Starkel might be the guy. Kellen Mond last year against Power 5 opponents completed less than 50% of his passes. He did not look very good at all. He was very hyped up coming out of high school. There's no question he's athletic. He's got a lot of physical skills, but he's got a lot to learn about the position. He didn't seem to learn a whole lot under the previous head coach, so maybe now the so-called quarterback whisperer, Jimbo Fisher, turns him into an SEC caliber player. If he does, look, Texas A&M could be legit. They've been soft on defense. They bring in an Arco from Notre Dame, one of the most highly thought of defensive coordinators in the country. We know they have athletes. We know they recruit well. If they can figure that part of the equation out and they can be at least adequate on defense, then we're talking about a surprise team in the league. If both those things or one of those things does not happen, then we're looking at the same underachieving Texas A&M program who thinks they should be playing for national titles, but more often than not is playing for fourth place in the Western Division.
Real quick, with all the news still circulating about Ohio State and Zach Smith continuing to make an ass of himself on Twitter and investigations continuing and more stuff coming out, as Urban Meyer, once he comes back, does he make it through this season, or does it just become too much of a distraction?
I think Urban, and I'm not saying this as a positive quality, but I think Urban has the ability to block all that out, convince himself that he has done nothing wrong. If you watch that press conference, it was almost as if, how do you guys have the nerve to make me go to the podium and speak on this? Mm-hmm. Somebody asked me today on another show, do you think Urban will coach next year? I mean, the Paul Feinbaums of the world have already said this will be his last year. I don't think so. I don't mean, if the administration was even thinking about that, they wouldn't have put themselves under all this scrutiny and criticism to keep him around for this season if they were going to let him go at the end of this year. Urban has nowhere else to go, in my estimation. I don't think he's going to get another elite program job. He's in his home state. So I think Urban's actually going to weather the storm. They're going to be really good this year, and he'll be around for a while, whether people like it or not.
Mike, we thank you, man. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good, guys.
There's some who think that Urban could be the next head coach of the Cleveland Browns if things don't work out for Hugh Jackson. I'm not saying that that's feasible, but whatever. All right, we are going to try again with a certain member of our panel that we weren't able to get yesterday. We'll possibly try.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
It is Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we come to you on Thursday, 800-956-7266. We are brought to you by the folks at Founders Federal Credit Union, who want you to know that if you get a Select Founders Visa credit card, whether it's low rates or high rewards, using Select Founders credit cards on school supplies, clothes, new computer, even college tuition, will help prepare your kids for their first day of school. Apply online at foundersfcu.com/visa. If you missed us at the earlier part of the hour, Will Muschamp, very complimentary of the folks in compliance for getting the Josh Belk scenario all taken care of, so to speak, and also the injury situation. No Chavis Dawkins this week, and Mon Denson, the hamstring injury, he's been spotty this week. There's no necessarily confirmation whether or not he'll play, but that is a position where South Carolina can afford some attrition. They've got 4 guys opting for 1 spot on that.
All righty, 800-956-7266. Couple of quick notes. Cleaning up something we were talking about last night. Listener Keith sent us an email about 96. Remember, we were talking about 96, and I said it was named because it's 96 miles from Columbia. Wrong. He says, according to the history of 96,
yes,
it is named 96 because the early traders in the 1700s mistakenly believed it was the number of miles to the Cherokee village of Kiowee in the upper South Carolina foothills. After its naming, many other places in South Carolina adopted this mileage from Kiowee in their names, such as 6 Mile in Pickens County, which I thought was named 6 Mile because it's 6 miles from Clemson.
I guess not.
Maybe it's not 6 miles from Clemson. So 96 is named because it's supposedly or mistakenly 96 miles from the Cherokee village of Kiowee.
So I'm reading that actually right off of Wikipedia now. So he must have taken that right.
He did.
From
he sent us the whole thing. Yeah.
So you're telling me that you were misinformed about something involving South Carolina?
I was indeed. I always assumed 96. It just made sense. It seemed like it was 96 miles from Columbia. If you ever driven it,
I can confirm to you right now via MapQuest that 6 Mile is not 6 miles from Clemson. It is 9.1 miles from Clemson.
Well, not Clemson. Oh, 6 Mile.
Yeah, 6 Mile is 9.1 miles.
Right. I
just
thought it was Clemson's the nearest municipality to 6 Mile.
Well, see, the reason there is they named it 9 Mile, and somebody inverted the 9 to
it
6.
It became 6 Somebody hit the sign, it turned it upside down.
Should have called it 8 Mile. Then you could have named it after the Eminem movie. No. Okay.
No, because it precedes.
There was a movie named 8 Mile.
Eminem.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Marshall Mathers, you've heard of him? You familiar with his work, The Real Slim Shady?
I thought he was Mathers. I thought he was what's his name?
No, you're not talking about Leaving the Beaver.
Yeah, I thought that was Leaving the Beaver.
About Jerry Mathers.
Not the same Mathers. Huh? One of his brothers, maybe. They're related.
I don't think so.
No,
I don't believe.
Let's go to Alex in Myrtle Beach.
Davis.
He's chilling out today as he continues his early retirement.
Sabbatical.
Alex, how are you?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Well, probably retirement, but sabbatical to keep it, I'm always, 39. But actually, I appreciated the 96, that information. I never knew that. Pat Conroy's novels references 96 humorously, and I think it's South of Broad, one of his books. But quickly, I just get to listen to Mike Morgan. If I could quickly say, it's always wonderful to hear him. These are my favorite announcers. Now I know why I've always liked him so much. He has a terrier, a Boston Terrier, but I have a Silky Terrier, and he's the best dogs in the world. But I want to quickly touch about what you talked about last night about the script on the side of the helmet. And Gene Sapikoff from Post and Courier about 4 or 5 years ago wrote an article about the Gamecock helmet, and I'm a big Gamecock fan. And then the subtitle was A Messy Blob. And he said that, the C, block C, and it has gotten smaller, like someone said last night. He said the block C, the Gamecock on it, you can't really recognize it a lot of times on TV or higher up in the stands. And I started looking at it critically, and I think he may be right. Maybe this may be an opportunity to look, objectively, and maybe there could be Alabama has a wonderful thing going, right? That guy was a genius who came up with that. But maybe a spur on one side that's big and something else on the other side. But I agree that the helmet, I think it's okay to change the helmet. I mean, the uniforms around, but the helmet should pretty much stay the same. And I think you're on to something about that. But Gene Sapikoff wrote an article about it. So, but I'll get up and listen to your answer, and have a good night.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, I want to see what it looks like from the press box, which is just about the highest point in Williams-Brice Stadium.
You can't see anything from the press box. That's not a fair.
Unless you have your binoculars.
Well, I have my very strong binoculars, thank you, and I can see quite well, and I want to see how it looks through my binocs.
Here's the most important look, the way it needs to look. It needs to look good on TV.
Yes.
If it looks good on TV, that's how it will translate.
Well, their best helmet ever on television was
the George Rogers helmet.
Those helmets, if I'm not mistaken, those helmets, not only do they have the big block C with the big bird on the side, but across the temple, they had cocks. And on the back.
I thought Big Bird was yellow, by the way. No.
And on the back, they had USC. Very cool looking helmet. And they also put spurs on the helmet for great plays. Remember that?
Right.
And they had big stripes. It was a helmet that jumped out at you.
I wish.
And I mean, you know, you have like Ohio State puts their Buckeyes on their helmets. Different schools put different things. I think Clemson puts little tiger paws.
I miss those helmet stickers.
Yeah.
I don't know why they stopped going with those.
Where?
I'm sorry. Like anyway, like I don't see much of them anywywhere anymore.
Ohio State does it.
I know
Clemson does it.
I'm saying it's rare now. It's rare now. It's
George
phasing out.
George had the little dog bones. They put on.
Yes.
So anyway, we'll see what it looks like, and it's really irrelevant. But since people are talking about it, I think it's more important to talk about Josh Belk getting approved for immediate eligibility. Here's what his attorney Everett Stubbs sent to us in a release this afternoon, quoting him, quote, "We are extremely pleased with the results for this wonderful young man, his family, Coach Muschamp, Coach Thompson, University of South Carolina Athletics Department. I can't express enough the refreshing level of professionalism and expertise that Coach Muschamp and his staff in the USC Athletic Compliance Department operated with in this process. Very impressed with that whole crew in Columbia, though this process and the synergy for which they have shown through the process and the synergy for which they have shown on the issue, it is obvious that there is no shortage of leadership and dedication within that program." So he has some very good things to say about USC, and they should be commended for getting this done. You know, it's a situation where when he left Clemson, the stated reason was to be closer to his family because there is a medical issue with a member of his family there, presumed to be his mother, and he wanted to be closer to home. And, you know, USC to Louisville is about 90 minutes, I think. And I guess it's longer than that to Clemson, though not by a great degree. You might recall when this was going on back in May, he looked at Georgia, he looked at Tennessee, and eventually settled, of course, on USC, which was thought to be the favorite, especially after Dabo Swinney and Clemson gave him a complete release, no restrictions on where he could go.
And I know that this, you know, just listening to different people talk over the course of this week, you know, I know it chaps some people at Clemson that he gets immediate eligibility. The fact of the matter is he just didn't want to be there. And I think that what's the harm in allowing the young man to pursue his football career elsewhere? And you know, I've never been a big fan of the transfer penalty. I don't want it necessarily to come into a free agency, but the man was in good academic standing. He had, from all accounts, tremendous grades. And I know that the situation with his family was something that put into it a lot as well. And, you know, from my mind and for my money, I think that there needs to be more of this type trend going forward with the NCAA to allow, you know, especially in hardship situations, the ability to transfer without penalty.
Well, the regular student has the ability to transfer.
Yeah, a regular student doesn't bring in millions of dollars for your university.
What, do I get into that? I got my hands open.
Ooh. They talk about the kids getting any of the money.
You're talking about the football players?
Yes. Yeah, they don't get any of that money.
No, I mean they get their room, their board, their scholarship. They get their stipends. What are you saying, Pro?
They don't get the profit off their likeness.
I'm a little bit surprised that
what I'm saying,
you would behave that way.
No, what I'm saying
it's totally out of character for you.
No, what I'm saying is you're saying they're not like the regular student. Yes, they are. The regular student doesn't get a dime either.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, no, I mean The scholarship athletes, they get their stipends.
Huh?
They get money.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they do all right for
What
themselves.
I think Pro is
when you
trying to
add in the stipends and the Pell Grants and everything else, they do okay.
I'm saying I think Pro thinks that you get more. Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. A couple of scores already in here on the college football weekend. UCF leading UConn 7-0 in the first quarter. Minnesota leading New Mexico State 7-0. Kennesaw State leads Sean Elliott's Georgia State team 7-0. No score between Ball State and CCSU. And North Greenville and Tusculum, no score after one quarter.
And Wake Forest at Tulane, that'll kick off at 8 o'clock. And then I imagine a lot of folks going to watch that Texas A&M game tonight on the Clemson side, get a look at what the Aggies will show as we roll into the college football season. And now we roll into tonight's session with the money coach Fran Halloran as he joins us here on Sports Talk. Excited about the college football season being back upon us and all that money that's going to be made across the country. What kind of dollars are we talking about, Money Coach?
Well, guys, first of all, good evening. Thanks for having me. Hope y'all are doing well. And yeah, I don't, I think this is the most wonderful time of the year. Not to borrow from the song that touts Christmas and wintertime, but this is it. I mean, if you don't get excited about college football getting started, something's wrong with you.
Cool.
So this is the time of year that I get really excited. And what I've kind of looked at this evening is these money games this weekend. And we all know it's tradition. A lot of the big boys, patsy up the first week of the season, and they pay somebody to come play them. And, they're kind of guaranteed then that they get a win, and some little small school gets a big payout. But this is getting ridiculous. Have you guys looked at some of these payouts? Have you looked at any of this stuff? Have you done any exploration on this? Because it's just amazing to me, the kind of money over these games just this weekend, starting tonight, going through the second. $72,285,000 will be paid out to some over 73 games. 6 of those games are legit. Those are the special showcase games, like the Washington-Auburn game, Louisville, Alabama, West Virginia, Tennessee. Those teams are all getting paid a substantial amount of money. Like, for instance, Louisville's getting $2,750,000 for playing Alabama. Alabama gets $4.5 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
But those are the big showcase games. But these other games, these other 67 games, are what really strike at the heart of what I absolutely believe is now the minor leagues of the NFL. $72,285,000 is going to be paid out over 73 games. $990,000 per game. That's a lot of money. In particular, right here at home, right? Coastal Carolina is going to get $1.2 million for playing South Carolina this weekend. And I heard you guys talking earlier. I don't care if Coach Moglia is the greatest motivator since Newt Rockne. South Carolina better hang 50 on them. And that defense better keep them in single digits, or people are going to be up in arms. It's as simple as that.
Here's one that's a quirky one. Colorado State is going to receive $2 million this year from going to Gainesville, part of the $7 million to buy out Jim McElwain's CSU contract. Yeah, so that was something that was big. That was
really, and it's weird. And speaking of Florida, how about this one? This is a head scratcher. Charleston Southern is going all the way to Florida, and they've done this before, have they not?
Yes.
Hasn't Charleston Southern gone to the Swamp to play before? They're only getting $475,000.
They got $400,000 last year to go to Mississippi State.
These FCS teams, I mean, it's a big money day for them, but still, they don't get the kind of money the FBS teams. I mean, the Citadel, closes out the year. I think it's the Citadel closes out the year with its traditional rival, Alabama.
Alabama.
Yeah. I mean, and you're right. They're probably going to get, $300,000 or $400,000. I mean, that's.
I wonder if travel's included in that for them. Because
they don't have
to travel as much. The question is, aren't we those seeing great, and I use the term adroit ADs shop around? Well, we can get this from this school. Wait a minute. Do I hit 50? Do I hit 50 over here? You need somebody over here. Yeah. And they actually market themselves to see who's going to whip their behinds on a given Saturday.
I think there's a lot of machinations, if you will, behind the scenes. And I think, again, Clemson plays Furman this weekend. Clemson, it's only, Furman, what are they driving, an hour up to Tigertown? $360,000. I just wonder why these small schools are playing these big schools on the cheap. If you're going to go all the way to the Swamp in Gainesville, by golly, that's $1 million trip.
Yeah. You know why? I'll tell you why. They're at the mercy of the big school. I mean, they want these big games for two reasons. Number one, the check, no matter what it is. And two, it does help them in recruiting, even though they're recruiting a lesser level player, when they can say, hey, look, we're going to go play in the swamp in your freshman year, your sophomore year. We're going to go play at Williams-Brice or Death Valley. That's part of the attraction for them. You know, in visiting with all these schools around the state this month and talking to them, these schools that have the games, the FCS schools who have the games against the FBS, they make no apologies for that. I hate those games. I hate the matchups because so many of them become absolute routes and the interest is out of the ballpark by early second half. And, you know, the injuries can occur. Maybe, I mean, look, the big guys can get hurt just like the little guys, but it seems like they have less depth. I mean, look at Furman and Furman in particular. Now they're an FCS team. So they are at 65 scholarships. Clemson will be at 85 scholarships. Playing in that heat, the depth factor at Furman is going to impact them, much more than it will at Clemson.
That's why I picked Clemson to cover the spread and then some.
I give Furman credit for a lot of heart.
But here's the other thing.
Well, they're going to have a lot of heart, but they're going to get their fannies waxed for all $360,000.
But on the just for a contrasting note here, Money Coach, these payout games, these buyout games, that's the biggest donation for a lot of these programs that they're going to get all year.
No doubt, Will. Yeah, you are 100% correct, and that's why I understand the rationale behind it. I get it. I understand that $360,000 to Furman for driving an hour to play Clemson, that's a huge payday.
And I don't know if
monstrous payday for these small schools.
I don't know if you can fund these programs without that.
Hey, let me give you the worst example of all time, Coach. Let me give you the worst example of all time. Just going back a few years ago. When was Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M? How many years ago?
Graduated 2013.
4.
It was in that era. South Carolina State opened the season at Texas A&M.
At Texas A&M.
And the next week, they went to Arizona.
Mm-hmm. But nobody knew
regardless of who.
Money.
All because their athletic department was in such a bad way and their school was in such a bad way. They sacrificed their football team for whatever money they could make off those trips.
Charleston Southern had 2 SEC teams last year, did they not?
Who's this?
Charleston Southern, I thought. Did they not?
They may have.
They may have.
But they were the ones.
South Carolina State. Georgia Southern this weekend.
Yeah, South Carolina State didn't know it, though. But, see, they didn't pull the cellophane off of Johnny Manziel to South Carolina State. Nobody knew who Johnny Manziel was.
Well, I mean, I think A&M beat them like 70-something to nothing.
It's 2 FBS teams at Mississippi State at Indiana. Because they had their rescheduled game from the South Carolina State game. That's why.
Well, the gist of this is, guys, and I understand these small schools need the revenue. I get it. But doggone it, if I wouldn't negotiate some better terms. So if I'm going all the way to Gainesville.
But I don't think they can. I don't think they have any negotiating. They have no negotiating power.
They have no hand.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. But once upon a time, these schools got a lot less than $360,000. And when you look at some of these games, like Oregon State is coming to Ohio State, right?
Mm-hmm.
$1.7 million to play across the country, more or less, at Ohio State. Some of these payouts are just incredible. Florida Atlantic getting $1.2 million to go out to Oklahoma this weekend.
Well, those two, those Power 5 schools.
Power 5 schools are a little different, Phil. I agree with you.
And they're looking for FBS wins.
Got a lot of scrimmages this weekend.
Yeah, they're looking at FBS wins.
This weekend.
Oh, no question. Hey, thank you. Good stuff. We'll talk to you next week.
Guys. Good stuff. Talk to you next week.
The money coach, Fran Halloran. Yeah, I mean, look, South Carolina paid Navy $1 million a few years ago to come to Columbia.
Sometimes you can pay for that and lose.
But the FBS win, if you get it, is big.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Some more from Will Muschamp during his radio show. He says, I'm going to propose to Coach Tanner. We have a concert every year. He says they got a lot of exposure for the program and a free brand new field. Listen, I think that's the underrated part of this hustle from Ray Tanner. They got a chance to get a brand new resodded field for free and also were able to get some money in on that concert. And they were on the field today, apparently, according to Muschamp, and they said it was awesome.
Yeah, let's get Paul McCartney in the stadium. Let's get Elton John. Elton John is coming to Columbia.
Colonial Life.
Put him in the stadium.
Do you think
in August?
I was wondering why they got him for Colonial Life and not Williams-Brice. Maybe the demand can be upped with that.
We're watching UCF and UConn 14-0 up in Stores, and boy, this offense by UCF, they are snapping the ball at about 5-6 seconds in. They are really pushing that ball up to the line of scrimmage and pushing it down the field.
When I saw Josh Heupel's offense at Missouri for the first time, I thought that's exactly how South Carolina needs to run their offense, because I think the skill positions are very, very similar into what they have talent-wise. I don't even think South Carolina might have better skill position players than Missouri has, and I think they needed to use that formula, and maybe it'll look somewhat like that for South Carolina on Saturday when Brian McClendon's new shiny new offense comes on the field.
Randy Etzel's probably thinking, can I go back to Maryland? Oh, wait, no, I don't want to go back to Maryland.
Well, he's already gone back. He's already done one do-over.
Yeah.
You don't just walk into Pratt & Whitney Stadium at Rentschler Field and expect a route, though, do you?
Well, you heard what happened at Central Florida.
Whose field?
It's Pratt & Whitney Stadium at Rentschler Field. That's their
at UConn?
Yeah.
Oh.
You see what happened at Central Florida during the practice, didn't you?
No.
Johnny Dawkins brought his basketball team in and said, see, that's how I want the fast break run right there.
They are moving at a very fast pace. All right, so South Carolina, Coastal Carolina on the new field, on the new turf. Joe Moglia back. Good to have him back coaching at Coastal Carolina. And he spoke with the media earlier this week.
Yes, on the conference call for the Sun Belt Conference, speaking mostly about South Carolina, but also sharing how he feels about his team as he comes back onto the sidelines for the first time in 2 years.
I missed not being here a year ago, so I'm back on the sidelines with our team, and frankly, to be able to spend a little bit more time with everybody else in the Sun Belt. Our guys started the year, started preseason in really, really good shape. It's the best condition team, I think, that we've had ever since I've been here. We've got the best leadership from within since we've been here. But we also have a big disadvantage in the sense that we only have 70 scholarships. So if you had a chance to fine tune the other 15 scholarships, that's a pretty big competitive differential, especially with regards to overall depth and special teams. But that's something we've got to be able to handle.
You've got kind of 2 points of reference, I guess, playing South Carolina in the opener. You've got the last time you played South Carolina, it was 70-10. Last time you played an SEC team, you had Arkansas down like 12 points with 8 minutes left or so. So do you use either one of those? Do you bring those up to the team? How do you look at those two results?
No, I don't think either one has anything to do with what's going on as far as this coming Saturday goes. The first time I was, at the time, South Carolina was ranked 9th in the country, and we scheduled that game late, like in the middle of the season, and we were playing the playoffs the following week. So we didn't want to risk that. Having said that, they were a good team, but whatever happened that day has got nothing to do with what's going to happen this week. I've heard Muschamp say that that he thinks since he's been a college football coach, this may be the best team he's got. I've had an opportunity to look at them certainly on film. I think they're a pretty good football team. With regard to Arkansas, again, different team. These guys are really very, very good. They're nationally ranked. I wouldn't be surprised if they wound up top 10 in the nation but by the end of the season. But whatever happened last year, and certainly whatever happened 3, 4, 5 years ago, whenever it was, is irrelevant to what's supposed to take place this week. I don't even think I ever bring it up.
Obviously, you want to win every game you play. Can there be a victory in this game without a win, and what would you consider that?
I think when we go into every game, regardless of the score happens, and I felt this way from the time I showed up at Coastal Carolina, everybody wants to win. We know that. We understand that. Everybody wants to be able to achieve that. But you can't necessarily control winning because you can't necessarily control the other team. The one thing you can control is what you do and how you do it. So our job, literally, for each season, for each preseason, for each spring ball is, are we maximizing as a coaching staff the potential of our team? If we are doing that, then we got to look in the mirror and feel pretty good about how we're doing. If we're not doing that, then it's simply unacceptable. So if we win a game where we have match size potential, that's not okay. If we lose a game where we have, that is okay. Now, no one wants to lose. But that's the way we're going to approach this game. That's the way we're going to approach every other game. Our guys are going to be well aware there's going to be 91,000 people in the stadium. Our guys are well aware that they're good. Our guys are well aware of all those things. I don't have to go out of my way to point those out. But we're in control, at least in what we do, and that's what's going to be our emphasis.
I want to run through a wall for that guy.
He say 91,000?
That's what he said.
Hadn't been to USC in a while. They haven't. Yeah, I love Coach Mowgli, and he's truly a great guy. Anybody ask him a money question like I always do? No. Somebody should have done that.
We were talking. Speaking of money, we were talking about this in the last segment. The buyout games that could go awry. Troy got themselves a nice payday of $985,000 to go into Tiger Stadium and beat LSU last year.
Another recruiting note. Just noticed here a story on Rivals on Quavaris Crouch of Charlotte, the running back linebacker. So he tells Rivals today that he will visit USC unofficially for the Georgia game. He's looking at the Duke game for his Clemson official visit, or it might take place in December. Of course, he had told a website, Carolina Blitz, that Clemson, Alabama, Florida State, Michigan, and Southern Cal will get his officials, with USC and Tennessee remaining in the running. And so he'll take an unofficial visit to Tennessee as well. So the Georgia game, obviously, for South Carolina stands to be big on the field, very important, but big in the stands as well with the players they have coming in for that game. It's risky. On the one hand, it's going to be the best atmosphere they'll have probably all season. 3:30 kickoff should be a great day for football. The other flip of it is, if you're playing one of the top teams in the country, if you don't play well, and if you don't play up to your standards, you could be embarrassed at home in front of some of your top prospects, and that could be a turnoff to these guys.
I mean, I think about where it seemed like South Carolina had all its eggs in the basket of the Kentucky game last year, and just how much anticipation was in there. And there were a lot of big visitors from what I remember who were there for that game last year, and it really didn't live up to the billing. I mean, they were able to get the big open with the first play from scrimmage with Deebo Samuel scoring, but from beyond that, it turned into pretty much a dud. And then you had Samuel getting hurt later on in the game, and it really was a net zero from them, and maybe even a net negative after all the bad stuff that came out of that game. Just from that standpoint, you don't want to build something up if you can't at least match that intensity. I don't think South Carolina has to win this game, but you at least have to represent well enough in order for recruits to be impressed and also show a good atmosphere like that.
I would agree with you, but some recruits are very fickle. They look at, hey, this team needs some help.
Not the great ones.
No.
They want to go where you're winning now because they're only going to be there 3 years.
But they're
not interested in rebuilding.
Some of those great ones come in to go to other schools.
I mean, why does Trevor Lawrence go to Clemson where there's a senior quarterback returning who had just won a league championship and got you in the playoffs? Because he's attracted to being in a program that's already playing for championships and will get his shot eventually. The winning
right away.
The winning and that's why the big teams right now, the successful teams, stay up there because they're attracting the very best players. Kennesaw State leading Georgia State second quarter, 7-0. Kennesaw State in the Big South. New Mexico State leading Minnesota. Hello, Big Ten. 10-7 second quarter. I need UCF to slow down just a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Well, they stuffed them on fourth down, I believe.
They're laying 24. They're up 14-0. I need them to slow down.
Another Muschamp note. He says this about Deebo Samuel. I plan on him getting really tired on Saturday. So they are not holding back with number one.
As hot as it's going to be and as humid as it's going to be, it's not going to be hard for people to get tired. I mean, there's one thing about being in shape. Whole nother thing to be in game shape.
Some of us have to walk up that hill at Clemson.
Good luck with that.
I'm still trying to see Brian Edwards. I think I may see Saturday the biggest punt return I've seen.
It's a lot.
All right, that'll do it. Thanks to everybody that was with us. We enjoyed it. Thank you, Will and Pro, and of course the great Brian Leonard. We'll see you tomorrow night for a Football Friday here on Sports Talk.